So thanks everyone for joining us today. We have a very spooky Halloween themed coffee break for you all to talk about the spooky side of research, the scary side of research sometimes, sometimes funny, data quality issues. So I think we can go ahead forward, Greg. Thank you. Oh, I'm remiss. We should introduce ourselves, right? I'm Lisa Weber Rayleigh. I am the Chief Research Officer here at Greenwald. While we'll talk a lot about data quality today, we've been talking about data quality as an organization for decades. So, Greg, introduce yourself.
Greg Hirschberger, Managing Director, Health and Benefits. I work a lot with B2B data, which, as we'll talk about, tends to see a lot of fraud and data integrity issues. So excited to talk about this stuff.
And hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Rubenstein, Director on the health side here at Greenwald. And I am definitely monitoring fielding a lot on a day-to-day basis. And so I see a lot of these issues that we're going to talk about. And as Lisa mentioned, some of it is scary, some of it is also funny. So we'll see some of those examples later on.
So we'll start with big picture. We have our photo of cheese here. And so when we as an organization talk about data quality, our data integrity framework is really built out like the public health disciplines model, Swiss cheese model of infection control. So having gone through COVID, the model of infection control there is, if you imagine there's multiple layers of infection control, the Swiss cheese has holes in it. So each layer does have holes in it, but what you want to do is put as many layers as possible where the holes are not lining up exactly. So that helps prevent infections from spreading. So our sort of philosophy or framework for data integrity is very similar to that. Have multifaceted layers in the data quality process to help protect and mitigate the spread of bad data. So we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about our 4 core tenets, but as I mentioned, it's taken decades of experience to come up with these 4 tenets. Data quality issues are not new. They're as old as survey work has been, back to even mail surveys or phone surveys. But in terms of online surveys, which is really what we're focusing on today, the issues have, I guess I would say, exacerbated or exploded because of the volume of survey work and just the nature of some of the technical fraud that we see in the online environment. So our 4 tenets, which we'll talk about more in depth in a moment, are protecting our clients' data integrity is really paramount. It's our focus. We feel like we are the guardians or keepers of our clients' data and making sure that it is clean as possible. Second tenet is that you always have to be on guard. Data issues are pervasive, they change, they can strike at any moment. So we are all, we talk about spidey sense here at Greenwald. We all have our spidey sense turned on with our projects to sort of suss out or feel what might not be real. Our third tenet is actually tied to our membership in the Global Data Quality Excellence Pledge, which is all parties in the research ecosystem really must take actions or be involved to protect data. And so following that, 4th step here is, if everyone kind of does their part, we mitigate the risk for data quality issues. For us, it's really a big part of what we do is to understand the health and wealth space. And through that understanding, that allows us to put the right data integrity steps into your project, from sample through the instrument, the survey or the guide, to field management, to data processing. So let's talk a little bit more about those 4 tenets and how we sort of evolved those over time.
Sure. So first one being, again, protecting our clients' data integrity is paramount, and it seems very obvious, but I think it's worth, reminding ourselves that that's why we do all of this. We need to protect our clients' data. And a lot of clients, just aren't aware of the magnitude of data fraud that's out there. So that responsibility really falls to us to make sure that we're getting them data that they can believe in, data that they can trust to then take and move forward and use in making their business decisions. And, sometimes you hear, well, there's just going to be a little bit of noise in the data. We want to minimize that as much as possible. While that's the case, whenever it comes to especially quantitative data, we can accept a minimum, amount of noise, but we want to keep it to that minimum as small as possible. Some folks may also feel that it's too time consuming or too expensive to seek out and remove those bad actors, aren't really sure where to start. As Lisa kind of outlined, we have a process that really involves all of the parties in the research ecosystem, and we look from start to finish. It starts at questionnaire design, it starts at selecting sample providers, moves forward into checks within the survey, and then checks after the survey. Really hitting it from all fronts when looking at data quality. And obviously, when bad data is present in projects, the conclusions or insights can be misleading. They could be outright wrong and result in bad business decisions that end up wasting more time, more money, and having to go out and refield. Not to mention, risking reputation in the industry whenever you're going out there with bad data. And like Lisa mentioned earlier, not all vendors know enough about the health and wealth industry to tell which respondents are good, which ones are bad, and we leverage that expertise in our data quality measures. Number 2 pillar here, data issues are pervasive, changing, and can strike at any moment. We found that to be very true. Just when you think you have a handle on something, the scammers or fraudsters come up with a new angle that you have to then account for. So things are constantly changing. I think the most recent example of what we've seen is AI coming into the fold. We have people consulting ChatGPT or whatever to answer open-ended questions, or to try and frame themselves as an expert in a field where they really know nothing about. And really what we're seeing is the most serious data issues are rooted in these online trends that are impacting digital spaces like bots, hacking, the dark web, ad fraud, and now AI. So bad actors, why are they in it? I mean, they're trying to game the system to make some dough. Which is why, as our targets get more narrow, if we're looking for someone specializing in a certain area, then we see incentives go up. And when incentives go up, the amount of fraud tends to go up as well.
Thanks. And so I'll start off with number 3, all parties involved in the research ecosystem must take actions to protect data. And this sort of summarizes and encompasses a lot of the stuff that Lisa and Greg already mentioned. As you can sort of see on the bottom, we have the audience suppliers, the data collectors and interpreters, which would be us, and the clients and the data consumers. And everyone is sort of plays a part in this. So when we look for suppliers, we look for people who believe in all of this in the way that we do as well. These are suppliers who are taking action. They're investing in new ways and new technologies to sort of fight back against this fraud and to sort of like prevent it from happening in the first place. And us as the data collectors, as Lisa mentioned, sort of knowing what we're looking for those cases and knowing that it's bad data. We also participate in industry-wide panels about data quality. We present about it. We really want to lead on this issue And that also sort of leads to the data consumers and the clients, and that we want to educate about this. For example, this coffee break today, right? We're talking about this issue. We're talking about what's happening, why it's happening, how it happens, and what we can do about it. And with that being said, number 4, if everyone does their part, we can mitigate the risk. We're not going to get rid of it completely, but as Lisa mentioned with the different sort of Swiss cheese, we can make those holes as small as we can. And so part of that, again, is everybody being involved. The suppliers need to be transparent about what they're investing in, how they're improving their respondent recruitment. We like to see them as partners. So we like to work with them about work with them with these challenges. If we have bad data, we like to give them feedback, what we're seeing, why we're seeing it, why people are getting tossed. And then, as mentioned earlier, some of it has to do with research design. So that is, us working with our data consumers, our clients, and back and forth. If we have a bad questionnaire, we're going to have bad respondents. If someone is taking a 30-minute survey, by the end, they may not be paying attention, and that may not be a bad actor, but we're going to have some human error, which will be some of that bad data noise. And so we really want to work on that. So those are our 4.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'll just talk very briefly kind of about that. I guess we can call it the top of the funnel whenever it comes to deciding what sample sources we're going to use. We divide this into 3 kind of main types of sample. And while this isn't exhaustive, of course, there are pieces like where we're going to be getting our sample from clients. That would be a little bit different. But the 3 main ones here are non-probability, monetary rewards panels. So these are your traditional rewards panels. They can be single or double opt-in, where panelists are invited to participate in research. These could be river sourced, so coming from pop-ups or pop-unders to route people into the survey. And there are typically, rewards built into completing any study. Whether those are in the form of, a gift card or like a Visa card or something like that, where people can leave with actual cash or credits that have some sort of purchasing power with an organization. There's kind of a lack of investment in the verification of panelists in these type of panels, which is why we put that on kind of the lower side of quality, but they do have very broad reach. They have large size. We'll typically use these types of sources for consumers, and it's low cost as well, which has its upsides. In the middle here are the non-probability newcomer panels or expert networks. So these are typically a little bit more stringent in their requirements and verification of respondents. So they could be opt-in panels or invite only. They have more of a narrow reach. So we're looking at getting maybe very, very niche respondents, typically a little bit lower of an N size, but they offer some sort of unique value prop to deliver data integrity, whether that's blending online and phone, not doing online only. Sometimes phone validation of panelists, LinkedIn validation, which has its pros, has its cons, as we know that there could be, fakers on LinkedIn as well. And sometimes these are built for specific audiences. So for instance, if you're looking to get engineers, there may be a panel of engineers out there. Last one on here and highest on the quality scale are probability panels. So these are built on random sampling models using address-based sampling. There are very few suppliers out there that offer this capability, but they can include panelists without internet access. It's very methodologically rigorous. So if we're looking to get, published in an academic journal or something like that, this may be the route to go. That said, it comes with a pretty high cost. So that's something that needs to be taken into account as we're going through this. And regardless of which sample supplier you're using, you still need to implement, your data quality checks. While we may expect it to be a little bit lower on the right side of that scale, that doesn't mean that everybody is going to be attentive or is going to be exactly who you're looking for.
Thanks, Greg. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean by bad data. There are a lot of different types. Greg, Sarah, we've seen it all. First up, and the biggest one that I think when you're speaking to sample sources, often they're really focused on our true fraud. These would be bots. So anything that is programmatically created to complete surveys via computer, or survey farms, which is more common. Humans who are taking multiple surveys in a way that either they're pretending to be someone they're not, or they're using a variety of technical or physical, like this is an actual picture of a survey farm that was raided, I think back in 2020, 2021 in Virginia. Actual cell phones, unique IP addresses, but then sort of perhaps using some programming to then have these different devices take the survey. So I think there's a human and technical element to fraud, and that has been like the biggest and first sort of big group of people that we worry about. We also worry about stretchers and fakers, Greg, right? Like, tell me about those. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, so in this case, we're talking about, real people, not bots, and they can kind of fall into those two camps, right? So stretchers are people who are trying to help. They may think, say for instance, I'm going out to do a survey of benefit decision makers, and you have somebody who takes a screener and they're asked about their benefit decision making at their organization, and they say, well, I did just go through open enrollment and I asked a couple questions that I thought were like really good. So maybe I'll just say that I have a pretty high influence in benefit decision making. So that would be a stretcher. They probably aren't somebody we're looking for unless they actually are sitting in that side of their organization. But they're making it seem like they're the right person. So we have to build in checks to make sure that they really are. Fakers, on the other hand, a little bit more nefarious, just going into a screener thinking, I'm going to say yes to everything. And that'll make sure that I can get into this. And then I think fakers are going to be a little bit more apt to do some other things throughout the survey, right? Like try and get through it quickly, not really think too much about their answers. So they may be easier to spot than those stretchers.
And then that third one, I'm going to talk about the whoops people. So these are, real people. These are legit people, and they probably came into the survey with good intentions. But for whatever reason, which there are several, they may become inattentive. They're distracted. They're clicking the wrong things accidentally. They may feel rushed. And this is stuff that can be prevented to a certain extent before we even go into field. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have a 30-minute long survey, you're probably going to have people who become inattentive and tired and feel rushed toward the end and not answer seriously or start to skim, not read everything. And so that is something that we can work on in a questionnaire design. Make sure things aren't too wordy. People skim. Do we have grid after grid after grid? Like, give them something that's engaging to make sure that we're keeping their intention. And to a certain extent, we understand that these things happen. So we may let some whoopsie daisy things happen throughout the survey and let these people pass through. One thing that we may do is we may have several different checks or flags throughout the survey. So for random number, we have 5 put in place. And we understand humans are humans, and you may have someone fail one of those flags. but they pass the rest. Their data looks good. They're not speeding through. Their open end looks okay. Let them through. They may have misread or just looked away for 2 seconds and clicked the wrong thing. It's when it becomes repetitive behavior. This person failed 3 out of the 5 flags, 4 of them, all 5. That's when we would toss them out. That is someone who we would be concerned is not paying attention throughout the rest of the survey. We can't really trust their answers if it seems like, they're inattentive and they're not paying attention. So real person, most likely someone who may have come in and is who they say they are and becomes distracted or just is not giving it their full attention. And so that is that noise that we may not be able to trust the rest of their answers. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about the jokers?
The jokers, I mean, this is where, I say this tongue in cheek, but this is kind of fun or funny. So one of the things that Greenwald always does is we always review an open end in every survey, and that's a human looking at the answers. And, often we might see this regardless of sample source. We might see this with client listed studies, but really it comes out in like an open end, which we have some examples to share on our next slide. But it's kind of people that, from their answer, we can kind of see they're not really providing input seriously here. And I think it's important to note that the whoops and the jokers, sometimes those can happen because of the way that sample companies are distributing surveys out to individuals. So like, I know when we design a survey, when we're talking with clients, a lot of us have this idea that there's this person on the other end of the screen that's getting this invitation to take our survey, just our survey, and they're going to come in with a fresh brain, fresh attention, great attitude, and give us the input. A lot of times, once a sample provider recruits an individual into their panel and has got them there, they're going to try and push through as many surveys to that person as possible because it's a volume game. So you might be having someone on their 10th survey in the last day or 10th survey in the last 2 hours as they're entering your survey. So you have to sort of consider the fact that you're designing a survey with the thought that they're coming in super fresh. They may not be. And so this is where I think sometimes we get the jokers, because they're just trying to break up the monotony, perhaps, of, they're trying to get qualified for a survey, or they might throw in something kind of tongue in cheek or perhaps not serious. The latest one, though, is AI. Greg, let's talk about AI.
Yeah, so AI respondents, I mean, that we call it a type of bad data. It's really something that, it could fall under any of the 4 bullets above, except for maybe the whoops. I don't think anyone's accidentally using AI. But these could be people who are purposefully committing fraud. There could be a survey farm where all of the people, say they have 50 people in a room, they have a few computer screens, multiple tabs for different survey websites, and then they have ChatGPT over to the side that could, they could go in and look up, okay, I know this survey is going to be about XYZ. What do I need to know to maybe get into this survey? They could put in actual questions from it for open ends and say, answer this for me. And that's, a good opportunity for us to go in and find who these folks are. They could also be those stretchers that we talked about earlier, or people who are just trying to save a little bit of time, don't want to type in a few boxes into a response option or into a response box, and would rather have the computer do it for them. So one thing that we found is pretty helpful in telling who these folks are. But again, as we say, things are constantly evolving. So once we catch up, they may find another way to get around. But look at the length of responses to open ends and check the punctuation. If everything is a little bit too nice, too buttoned up, too polished, I'm going to question it a little bit. and maybe look at some other pieces of the data for that record to see if there are other indications of fraud or inattentiveness.
All right, so spooky story time. And I know we've got a lot, and I sort of want to caveat this all by saying a lot of the issues that we see are fundamental to the online world, right? We've all seen the media stories about fake accounts on social media, the dark web, your information getting stolen and then sold. That exists in the survey world too. So story time. Sarah, you want to talk about some of our open ends?
Yeah. I'll start off with some open ends, and I have several examples that I could give and talk about, but being mindful over time, I'm just sort of going to look at the ones that we have on the screen right now. So when it comes to bad open ends, you can kind of think of them in several different categories. You can just get like plain gibberish and like nonsensical answers. You have answers that are incomplete, stuff that's completely out of context. So like those first two there, I think, the one that's one of my favorites because I think it's both your incomplete, it is gibberish, it's out of context, is the what do you like about your health insurance? And someone just typed, I like the way the first two episodes are all. The first episode was really great, but I don't. What even is that? You also can see exact duplicates, and that's really where having that sort of like human eye who is reviewing all of these open ends, like seeing patterns. And in some ways, people may have a duplicate that makes total sense. So sort of keeping that what do you like about health insurance, your health insurance in mind, you may see several people just write my coverage, my network, like fine. It's when it becomes sort of a complete sentence, a complete phrase that has exact same punctuation and wording, like everything is exactly the same. So looking at that question and keeping, this Halloween theme in mind, an example would be if you saw several people like exactly type, I like my network. I like that I can see Dr. Frankenstein and only pay $10 for my copay, with exact wording matching and several people like typing that. Obviously that would raise a flag for me if I'm seeing multiple people type that exact same phrase. And then as Greg previously mentioned, this AI situation, it definitely seems to be noticeable when we have people giving us an essay response. It is not basic human behavior to give us an essay in an open end. People don't usually like answering open ends, let's be honest. We may get a few words, a sentence, 2 sentences. We have an example here of what are some reasons an employer might not offer disability coverage. You would expect someone to say like, we can't afford it at this time, or like just we don't see a need for it. And someone is giving us like a ChatGPT answer here. Like there are several reasons. One reason is XYZ, and like just filling out the entire box until the character limit is reached. And as Lisa mentioned, some jokers. So what are you most looking forward to in retirement? Easing out of the sweatshop in which I currently toil. Little good. So that's some of the sort of funny ones that we look at. Lisa, what are some of other scary stories that
I think that the chart on the bottom right is like my both favorite and least favorite example. Fielding a study about a financial services product, we happen to have some health questions in there, one of which was, do you smoke cigarettes? And in looking through the data, like spidey sense, right? Health spidey sense went off, 50% saying yes. That is just not at all what we would expect, especially for the population that we were surveying, which tended to be a little bit more affluent and educated. So, that was a sign of, we know the content area, this makes no sense, and is a good rule of thumb in that you should always try to have something you can benchmark externally to sort of get a sense of whether or not this is something you would expect. We've seen this play out in a variety of different ways, whether it's a nonprofit industry association that puts a link to their member survey up on their website and it gets botted. And we were given the data to clean that up. Or we've seen people share out a link on LinkedIn in what they thought was a closed group and it gets botted. So we've seen that play out in lots of different ways. I know we're close on time, but Greg, I really love your example in the upper right corner. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I'm sure that people are wondering why Jeff Bezos is on our slide, but he does love survey research. Reason being, I was doing a study with um, professionals, and we got conflicting survey responses. So in this particular study, we were asking people who they worked for, what their organization was, and we were going to take that data and then run it through a third-party data source and get some firmographics about that organization. So we had a bunch of people say Amazon. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Amazon is a pretty big company. I can totally see it, how we have, X number of HR decision makers or whatever it was from Amazon in a survey. But then I looked at role, title, and saw that all of these people said they were the CEO. So Jeff Bezos took my survey 5 times. I thank him for that. Unfortunately, I don't really buy it. So that's just a silly example or way to say, look for conflicting responses within your survey. You can catch a lot of bad actors that way. And the last piece I just want to touch on real quickly, looking at the table in the lower left, take a look at your metadata and see if anything looks off. If we get a ton of completes coming in the middle of the night, if we're looking at a specific geography, say we're trying to get Americans, and we get 50 completes between 2 and 3 a.m. They're all coming from the same operating system. They're all coming from the same browser. In this case, the browser is kind of not one that a lot of people use. So that should raise some red flags and demands higher scrutiny.
And I'll add to that. It's important that you look not just at your completes, but the total landscape of activity in your system. We use a variety of controls now, including a technical control that has eliminated a lot of the really core fundamental problems that we might see. But, a lot of times you'll see someone start a survey, terminate out, start again, terminate out, start again, terminate out, go again, and finally find the right pathway through your screener and then complete a multitude of times in a very, very short amount of time. So you only see that by looking at your terminates and your incompletes and your drop-offs and your completes in one data set. So I know that we are over time, but I wanted to, just in case anyone has questions or comments, wanted to give a moment. You can unmute or you can pop it in the chat if you don't want to speak. But we're always happy to talk data quality. So any of our staff, we all feel very passionate about this. If you have any questions, you can reach out to any of us. But any questions? A proportion of respondents we disqualify on average in a consumer survey. It depends. So again, we have a technical solution that sits between our sample providers and our surveys now, and that can eliminate anywhere between 10 to 35% of the traffic coming into our survey because of big red flag issues. Like, for instance, we're doing a survey of the United States and this person's information in their metadata looks like they're outside of the United States. We don't want them. But then in our in-survey checks, because we have in-survey checks, then we might be eliminating another 5% because they're telling us inconsistent information in the survey, or they're telling us things that they're not qualified for. And then after the survey is done, we're also doing checks, and there we're tossing, I don't know, what would you say, guys, like between 5 to 25%?
Yeah, I say that's
okay. I mean, I have run a consumer project where I tossed 97%, pulled it from a vendor, and had to go to a different vendor. So there are outliers there, but in general, that's sort of the landscape for consumer. The toss rates for B2B, as Greg mentioned, are much, much higher.
And we have found that, the more we can layer in automated checks the less time that we end up spending, and the fewer people we end up throwing out manually.
Any other questions from the group? Okay, well, thank you all for joining us for this Halloween edition of A Coffee Break and talking about sort of the scary, spooky side of data quality and research. And we hope you have a great weekend.